Security Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence, and Subcommittee on Emergency Management and Technology will come to order. The purpose of this hearing is to examine the state of U.S. law enforcement and how the Department of Homeland Security is engaged with state and local authorities across America to fight crime as well as prepare for disaster response. Without objection, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Michelle Steele, the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Clay Higgins, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Laurel Lee, are permitted to sit on the dais and ask questions of the witnesses. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good morning. We are holding an important hearing during National Police Week, a time when we recognize and honor the sacrifices and service of our men and women in law enforcement from across the country. I'm pleased to have some of my own constituents here that are joining us today, and I'd first like to recognize Odessa Police Chief Michael Gerke as a witness today. In addition, I'm pleased to have Midland County Sheriff David Kreiner and his wife Judy in the audience with us. I've had the luxury of getting to know both of these gentlemen as well over the last 2 years, and I know that Chief Gerke will provide some valuable insight as to what issues rural police departments are facing throughout the country. Unfortunately, I think we've forgotten what it means to support our men and women in law enforcement who serve our communities every day, many of whom, well, let me strike that, all of whom are real-life heroes. Last year, 246 law enforcement officers were tragically killed in the line of duty. This year, there have already been 41 officers killed in the line of duty serving their communities. Just this past Thursday, on May 11th, Sergeant Joshua Klaus of the Cameron Police Department in Texas was shot and killed by a subject who was wanted for shooting his wife during a domestic violence incident earlier in the night, as he and other officers executed a search warrant. Sergeant Klaus was an Army veteran and had a wife and 2 children. He is a hero, and I pray for his family and friends. We've also forgotten the importance of holding people accountable for engaging in criminal activities and preying on law-abiding citizens, from increases in aggravated assaults, robberies, and retail theft to dealing illicit fentanyl. I think many Americans no longer feel safe in their communities. Some cities are even releasing criminals back into their communities due to zero bail policies and downgrading the sentencing for felonies, allowing these bad actors to continue committing crimes. What message is this sending to career criminals? It is not one of law and order, but instead encourages lawlessness across the homeland. It is unacceptable. While criminals are not being held accountable for their actions, our law enforcement officers face extremely low morale in many places, and unfortunately, in some places, that's due to anti-police sentiment. Extreme budget cuts, rogue legal reforms, and the media bias against law enforcement have resulted in significant recruitment and retention challenges for state and local law enforcement agencies across the country. These factors are not only preventing law enforcement from carrying out their duties to protect Americans, but they're also impeding police agencies across the homeland from having the resources to further train officers and prevent other mishaps. If we continue down the path of cutting law enforcement budgets, police departments will be left with a difficult choice between lowering recruitment standards or being unable to meet their hiring needs. This committee has an important role to play as we oversee the Department of Homeland Security, which looks to support, and let me say that again, support state and local, tribal, territorial law enforcement agencies in their efforts to keep our communities safe, secure, and resilient. From a Homeland Security standpoint, it has been over 20 years since 9/11 happened, yet we still have challenges for the timely sharing of information and between the federal government and state and local agencies. While we have made significant progress, I worry that there continue to be gaps in how we share information in a consistent and timely manner. We have to work together to overcome these barriers, as information sharing is critical to combat the wide variety of threats that we face today. In particular, when it comes to fusion centers, which are primarily state-funded facilities established with the purpose of information sharing between those levels, there is a common saying that says, if you've seen one fusion center, you've seen one fusion center. It's important that we ensure DHS is properly supporting fusion centers as they serve as focal points in state and urban areas for the receipt, analysis, gathering, and sharing of threat-related information. States like Texas have many different threats impacting their communities. I've seen firsthand how metropolitan areas like the one I visited in San Antonio can coordinate seamlessly between federal, state, and local levels. Furthermore, DHS provides various federal grants to assist state, local, and territorial partners. We need to ensure that these grant programs continue and that they are effective in doing out what their mission says that they should be doing. Unfortunately, rural areas like my district do not experience that luxury and must rely on fusion centers that are located in other areas. And there have been numerous times in the last month where Texas DPS or CBP were pursuing human smugglers, drug traffickers, or other malign actors through small towns in West Texas along the border that have led to catastrophic loss of life. Had a fusion center been established that caters to the unique needs of those rural areas, maybe it could have been easier for local and state law enforcement agencies to better coordinate with CBP and DPS. Today, I hope that we can examine this issue. I hope that we can find ways to highlight the information sharing and where it can be more readily available and more effective. Lastly, it's important that our nation must restore a sense of appreciation for the men and women who wear the uniform, who protect our communities, and who have been willing to sacrifice their own lives for the betterment of their communities. We have a very distinguished panel of witnesses to testify about the challenges between state and local law enforcement agencies, both in rural and in urban areas. And I'd like to thank all of our witnesses, not just for being here today, but more importantly, for you and your family's sacrifices in being willing to serve our nation.